My name is Ralph. I actually work here at the Carnegie Science Center. This is the first time I've ever drank a beer on stage here, which is really cool. Alright, so today's talk is about astronomy. So I help run the Buell Planetarium and Observatory. We have an amazing theater of the stars upstairs, and on our roof we have huge research-grade telescopes that we use to observe the rings of Saturn or the moons of Jupiter. They're really stunning stuff. I love astronomy. This image is one of my favorite images, by the way. Some of you may have already seen it before. This is the Hubble Extreme Deep Field. This is a picture where the Hubble telescope looked at a piece of sky, a tiny piece of sky. Imagine holding a penny at arm's length, the amount of sky that would be covered by Abe Lincoln's eyeball is how big this image is. And in this image we see thousands of galaxies. What you're seeing aren't individual stars. Every point, every little smudge, all of this are galaxies. Each one of these galaxies contains hundreds of billions, or sometimes over 1 trillion stars. Many of them probably have planets around them. It's unthinkable, and it's amazing, and it's inspiring. And things like this are what get kids excited to become engineers or scientists, or just help to make awesome stuff. And that's what I want to spend my time talking about. But unfortunately, I have to deal with a lot of bullshit. And that's what this is about. I love PowerPoint animation. So we're going to talk about some of this stuff that sort of gets in the way, and astronomical misconceptions, and just stuff that's not really science, that's kind of outside the point that stops me from being able to spend as much time as I would like getting people excited about galaxies or planets or science or the stars. So we're just going to dive right into it. Turns out there's actual scientific literature on bullshit, which is amazing. There are these papers on the reception and detection of pseudo-profound bullshit. This is a public, this is a journal paper here. People with PhDs, they have to define rigorously what bullshit even is to do this. So it was kind of fun going through this. It turns out bullshit is everywhere. It's not just in astronomy. But some of the astronomy bullshit that I want to talk to you about, the first topic I want to cover is lunar fake news. This is something that was a big issue this year. As many of you already know, this year marks 50 years since the launch of Apollo 11. That's the first time that human beings have, yes, I saw one person applauding. We should all people land on the moon with this little clicker has more computing power than the Apollo 11 space probe. It actually probably does. And yet a lot of people think that we didn't, and I have to deal with them in the planetarium. They come up to me. I've had actual adult human beings come up and say, "That's not true." And this is insane. Why did you come to the Science Center? But anyway. First of all, if we had faked the moon landing, I guarantee you we would have faked Mars by now. Come on, it's been 50 years. If you're willing to fake landing on astronomical bodies, keep it up. There's no way NASA would have done what it did. Anyway, next. So the Soviet Union, so obviously the motivation behind the space race was a competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. It's the peak of the Cold War. And if there was any way that the USSR could have really pointed out or proved that the moon landing was fake, they would have done it. And yet they didn't, which I think is pretty telling. So when I say dynamic range of stars, in this case, one of the main things you'll hear people say, they'll say, look at those pictures. If you look in the background, the sky's black. But where are the stars? So I challenge you to take your phone outside tonight and take a picture of the stars. Good luck. It just doesn't work. And the other thing that's important is that it's nighttime here. That makes it pretty easy to take pictures of dark stuff. You see all that bright light? That tells us that in this image, the astronaut is in the daytime. It's really hard to take pictures of the stars in the day. Basically, everything in this image is unbelievably bright compared to the brightness of a star. We're talking 100,000 times brighter than the brightness of a star, or more. The dynamic range of cameras in the 1960s, the kind that was small enough to go to the moon, had no chance of capturing the stars. So that is not a valid argument. The flag is another one. People will say, okay, look, the flag is waving in the wind, but there's no air in space. And actually, that flag was designed here in Pittsburgh, which I think is pretty cool. And yes, you just couldn't be happy that we got Pittsburgh technology. Yeah, thanks, Jason. Yeah, so if you just had a regular flagpole on the flag would just pull the whole time, right? So they wanted to have the flag extended out. That's the whole point, is a photo op with this flag. And so they put a rod in the top of it that the flag would hang down from. And the whole thing was on a springy kind of curtain rod kind of material that they jammed into the moon's soil, right? And the whole thing bends a little, it wiggles, and the flag starts moving. And because there's no air on the moon, that wiggle continues on in perpetuity, really. It may still be wiggling a little bit from it now. So I, in fact, think that it's more proof that it was actually the moon. This is hilarious. Did you know there's a large percentage of people who think that Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing? Which, yeah, I have nothing else to say about that. I just think, what? And the biggest piece of evidence that I like to point to, other than it's a ridiculous conspiracy theory, is that there are reflectors, retroreflectors, that are on the moon. These are special mirrored surfaces that are designed to reflect lasers from the Earth to the moon and then reflect them back to us. We use that for ranging, to tell how far away the moon is. So laser ranging the moon without these doesn't work, yet it does work because they're there. Right? We can detect them. You can shoot lasers at them and see it come back. And we also can do really amazing research with this. We know now, because of this, that the moon is receding away from us slowly, about just under an inch a year. The moon gets a little bit farther away. Which I think is pretty amazing and inspiring science. So anyway, that's some of the few things that I often don't actually get to say out loud because I have to be nice because it's the Science Center. Like, oh, that's a very interesting thought. Thanks for coming to the planetarium. But today I can kind of break, so I'm going to just do it. All right, the next topic. This one is tough. I'm a little anxious about this, to be honest, because I'm sure there are many of you who are into this. So astrology, it turns out, is bullshit. So let's talk about that. Of course, this is very popular. I mean, everyone probably knows your star signs. What you might not know is that you're probably wrong about what your actual star sign is. So the idea of the zodiac is that your star sign is the constellation in the sky that the sun is in the day you were born. Now, not only have those dates shifted significantly because these star signs were assigned long ago during the Julian calendar, so they're all shifted by several weeks. Because the calendar that we use now is the Gregorian calendar. It was sort of shifted because people have a hard time making calendars that work. It's actually really difficult to make a good calendar. The Earth doesn't have a whole number of days, but that's a whole other thing. But there's not even 12 zodiac signs. There's 12 signs in the newspaper. So your sign is probably not what you think it is, and there's a good chance. Is there anyone here who was born between November 30th and December 17th? You guys are not what you thought you were. You are an Ophiuchus. Can we give a hand to the Ophiocuses out there? The constellations just don't line up the way they used to. Also, another interesting fact, Scorpius only intersects the ecliptic. That's the name of this. Alright. The yellow one in there is called the ecliptic. It's the path the sun takes through the sky throughout the year. It only actually is in Scorpius for 7 days. So you're only a true Scorpius if you were born between the 24th and 29th of this month, which I think is interesting. And of course, along with the signs not matching up to what you think they are according to the newspaper, another thing that's important is that there's no way that where Jupiter is in the sky affects you or where it was when you were born. The gravitational influence of the building we're in is greater on you than that of Jupiter or any of the other planets. The only bodies that have any real effect on the Earth are the sun and the moon, but even then, where they happen to be in the night sky has no bearing. There's just no evidence for it. But For those of you who are into astrology, I still actually think it is useful to know your astronomical, your zodiacal constellations, because they do show you where in the sky you can find the sun, the moon, and the planets. That's not bullshit. I think that's really interesting. In fact, if you look just to the left of Sagittarius tonight, you'll see the planet Saturn, which I think is pretty badass. And if you come to our Science Center events, you can see it through a telescope, which is even cooler. Now next, the seasons. Has anyone seen this fact before? I think this is hilarious. People think that our distance to the sun is what determines how hot the Earth is, which, I mean, on a large scale is true. But this 10 feet, the sun actually, the distance between Earth and sun varies by more than 10 feet. By a lot more than 10 feet. It varies by about 4 million miles every year. And what I think is really interesting is that our closest point in our orbit around the sun, which is called perihelion, perihelion this year will be on January 5th. That's when we're closest to the sun. Has anyone here been in Pittsburgh on January 5th before? Is that a warm day? No. The only reason that we have the hot and cold seasons is the tilt of the planet. It's not this distance variation. Although I do think it's really interesting that the northern seasons are almost exactly flipped from what our aphelion and perihelion distances are. But no, our seasons are just caused because the Earth is tilted. In the wintertime, in the northern hemisphere, the sun is only up for a shorter part of the day, and it hits the Earth at a more oblique angle, therefore going through more atmosphere and delivering less thermal energy to the ground around us. So the real reason for the seasons is just axial tilts, which I think is pretty interesting. And we're headed up, we'll be at our winter equinox in just like 6 weeks, so getting into the dark times. Good luck out there. All right. Yeah, so there are those who believe the Earth is not round, but flat. Are there any flat earthers here? I don't believe you. Yeah, this is insane. This is the hardest one. Now, I will admit, I haven't had anyone who I actually believe that they actually believe this talk to me about it. I'm almost certain that 99% of flat earthers are just straight up trolls. But I figure I should talk about it anyway, because it is one of those things that you see more and more all over the internet. My favorite is that the Flat Earth Society admits that the other planets are round. But you can prove it, and you don't even need technology to prove it. It was proved in ancient Egypt. Eratosthenes, it's hard to say a name, but he proved it by showing that so where he was born was in this place called Syene, a small ancient Egyptian town, and then he was a fancy science philosopher guy. That's why we still remember anything about him. And he moved up to Alexandria, which is farther north. Alexandria is above the tropics, so the sun is never straight up in the sky there. But it is in his hometown. His hometown's like right on the border of the tropics, which means that around the time of the summer solstice, the sun will be straight up, and that meant that he could remember days when you could see all the way to the bottom of a well, which is really unusual. That doesn't happen here in Pittsburgh. You have to be south of 23.5 degrees latitude to see that, which incidentally is the angle of the tilt of the Earth. That's what defines what that is. But anyway, he was able to measure the distance between these two cities and their angles, and just use like math, like pretty easy. Well, not that easy. It's trigonometry, but still. They had a lot of time, and he figured it out, and he estimated, not only did he prove that the Earth was round, he figured out its size and was accurate to within 1% of the actual number, which I think is astonishing. Another more modern piece of proof here, this is really cool. This is an image of Chicago, taken from far away with a telephoto lens across the lake, Lake Michigan, gigantic lake. And it's so far away that the curvature of the Earth means you only see the tops of the skyscrapers there. And that only happens if the Earth is round. If the Earth was flat, that wouldn't work. It's really hard. When I say if the Earth was flat, it's like my brain says, "What are you talking about? You're saying dumb things in public now." So when I was researching this talk, I found something that really amazed me. There are those who think not only that the Earth is not a sphere, they don't think it's just flat. They go all the way the other way. Did you know there are people who think that we're on the inside of the sphere? Yeah, I don't even, they think the cosmos is in between, and it just blew my mind. I just couldn't believe that anyone really thought this, but they do, apparently. Although I'm not sure if I believe them, which is like bullshit on top of bullshit. Anyway, now, it is true. Aliens are real. So aliens are another topic that comes up a lot. This is probably the one I see the most at the Science Center, and this is also the one that's probably the trickiest to talk about because it's really hard to prove something isn't out there. It's easy to prove that things exist. It's very hard to prove that things don't exist. And it also depends on what scale of the cosmos we're talking about. I think most astronomy people believe on a large scale, on a galactic or an intergalactic scale, that it may very well be that aliens are out there. I think there's very few of us who believe that they've visited us and abducted farmers and stuff. So this guy's hilarious. This has nothing to do with the talk. It's just amazing comics. Star damage. So the Drake equation is a real thing. This is this theoretical equation a lot of believers use to try and understand how many aliens are out there. It was made by Frank Drake. He also was into bullshit. So these things, I can actually tell you which ones are which. So R is the rate of formation of stars within a galaxy, right? F sub P is the fraction of those stars that have planets. N sub E is the fraction of those planets which are in environments that are suitable for life at all. So, like Mercury, really, really, really close to the sun, extraordinarily hot on one side, liquid nitrogen cold on the other side, probably not suitable for life. F sub L is the fraction of those planets which life actually appears on. F sub I is the fraction of those which then being intelligent life. F sub C is those that then produce civilizations that are able to release detectable signals of any kind. Human beings have been releasing detectable signals since the 1930s. So for a really tiny amount of time has our planet fallen into this category. What's also interesting is that those signals have been expanding out, and if you go to the planetarium, you can visualize this for you. I can show you something we call the radiosphere, which is about a 90 light year radius sphere around the Earth. And there are actually now exoplanets within the radiosphere that we know about, which I think is exciting. And then L is the length of times that those civilizations are able to persist. The thing is that nobody knows the right number for any of these, really. The first one kind of, we get star formation pretty good. And then the rest of them we really are just totally guessing. And so anyone who claims to have any really substantial knowledge about aliens, I would say, is probably full of shit. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is what we do know, which is a whole lot. We're living in a golden age of astronomy. I mentioned those exoplanets earlier. There are several thousand planets that we have detected for sure around other stars nearby. That number is thought to go up and up and up. We actually estimate for the whole galaxy there may be 1 trillion planets. When I was a little boy and I came to this very planetarium, there were 0 known exoplanets. We're living in an incredible age. We're able to observe the Earth from space. We're able to observe trillions of galaxies out there. We've taken pictures of black holes. It's a really stunning thing to be in astronomy education right now. I get to give people the universe for my job, and it's really an amazing, thrilling, and humbling experience. It's something that I would like to do more if I didn't have to deal with so much bullshit. Thank you. you.